in Brazil for the same traffic. When you think about advantages that you could find there, like rent, it's almost practically the same in Villa Olympia than in Midtown New York. And another big issue is fraud. Fraud is almost 10 times bigger in Brazil than it is in the US. And in my own experience, it's even higher. So going along with this, it's not just me talking about this, that over these 10 years I found it so complicated. And when you think about it, it's not only going Brazil, every time you want to open a different country and you want to transact in a different country, you actually have to open a business in each single country. Although you have the Iromail, you have Mercado Pago, you have to open a company in each one of these places. You got to open bank accounts, and bureaucracies are really complicated, right? So it's not only me. What I'm trying to also show here is that, what do you have? You have, I think, a great benchmark today. You have two companies with incredible management teams, with very similar business models that over the years have executed. In a region today that you can compare it in the amount of internet users, which is pretty much the same, but when you see the revenues, it's quite impressive. This is a number I just got a couple of days ago, and I was super impressed by the fact that today, Mercado Libre is, when you compare that revenue with eBay, it's 39 times less. And of course, this shows that the most successful company in Latin America, in the tech sector, that has cornered the market, that has an incredible management team, that has been built with hundreds of millions of dollars of investment, last year they did almost $300 million in revenue. And I think that's something really important to put in context, that although the market is there, it's still relatively small, but the growth potential is just dramatic, what we're having. And what we're seeing is that with that growth potential and the market being there right now, you're starting to see many VCs come of interest, particularly in Brazil, in Mexico, and in the region. You're seeing Redpoint, you're seeing Alta Ventures, you're seeing Telefónica showing some interest in investing in the region. But again, when you start thinking about how fragmented the market is, this is another graph I thought was super interesting, and why this makes sense is that when you start thinking about countries and cities in Latin America and where the wealth is, when you see that São Paulo is bigger than five or six of these countries, I mean, Argentina, Bolivia, Uruguay, Paraguay, and Chile, these are the same size of São Paulo. And I think that's just an incredible number. Because if you want to do an e-commerce site with delivery, you would probably make it in São Paulo faster and better than just opening it up in 5-6 different countries. Because at the same time, what's going on is that all this GDP that we're talking about, it's only happening in 5% of the totality of the other 5 countries. So it's also easier for delivery. And what makes also a very interesting point to all of this is, since there's more than 20 countries in Latin America, when you start seeing where it's convenient to start a business, when you start seeing that from 2010 to 2011, the growth of Brazil was even bigger than the entire GDP of the Caribbean and Central America, you also start seeing that there's other things that one has to start thinking, that probably concentrating in Brazil really does make a lot of sense. And also the same thing happened with the amount of GDP growth that happened between 2010 and 2011 was much higher in Brazil compared to Latin America. But with all of this, what's going on? A lot of investments in Brazil, a lot of capital into Brazil is leading to a country that is pretty hot. I mean, you're having, everything is more expensive, and although the currency has depreciated somewhat in the last in the last year, because it was at 1.6 and today it's like at 2.1, still it's pretty expensive for everything. But again, I'm not going to do the typical explanation that everybody has to do Brazil, because there's plenty of opportunity outside of Brazil. And Latin America today is, when you start seeing specific numbers, you're seeing that the majority of the cell phones and a whole bunch of different business models can be done outside of the region. You have 72% of all cell phones are outside of Brazil. The population as well is 65% of the population is outside of Brazil. Internet users is also bigger outside of Brazil. Nominal GDP, the GDP is bigger outside of Brazil. Of course, you have it more fragmented, but it's still bigger. But the real thing that's going on today, because why it's so interesting, Brazil, is that the e-commerce is happening there. And e-commerce is key for advertising. It's key for these internet businesses to grow. And probably the main reason this is happening is because the majority of the credit cards and debit cards are in Brazil today. Now, the story of growth is very impressive for Latin America, and it will continue to be so. And this is one of the things that most excites me personally, is that after being in business for the last 10 years, today it's really coming a reality. People are starting to put the credit cards online. People culturally are deciding to buy online. And in the last couple of years, the growth has been tremendous. But there is a lot of bureaucracy in the region, but there's big differences between different countries. I mean, when you compare Brazil and Chile, you have a country that is giving away money. They're literally giving away money for entrepreneurs to come to their country so they can build out internet companies. They're giving away $40,000. It's really easy to build your business over there. Tax rates are incredibly low compared to Brazil. So there's clearly a lot of opportunity there to decide where to start your business. And it's very different where you do it, because you could do it from Chile and do it for Brazil or from Argentina, for different places, but there are various differences between one country and another. Now, at the same time, something that we've come to a conclusion also is that when you start comparing Brazil and the BRICS, and probably you could do LATAM versus the BRICS in a sense. And what you're seeing here today is that distribution channels that work really well in the US, such as Facebook, Twitter, Google search, all across the other countries, they're not as big as they are in Brazil and Latin America. So I was showing in another graph before that today you have more Facebook users in Latin America than the US, and more people search in Google in Latin America than they do in the US. And that's really useful for when you want to translate a business model from the US into Latin America, because you could not do it in China, because over there, Google is very, very, very small. Twitter is non-existent. Facebook is non-existent. And then there's other advantages, right, to doing business in the region. It's much closer to New York. It's much closer to San Francisco. And time differences. Time differences is a big issue. I traveled a couple of times to China, and I'm telling you, the time difference is, you're totally discommunicated with the rest of the world, and especially because everybody else is using other forms of communication. They're not using Facebook, they're not using Twitter, they're not using YouTube. And I think, of course, there's other reasons why Brazil today is being so interesting. And I think not only Brazil, but other countries in Latin America. And I know a lot of friends not only have gone to this region for the growth of this potentiality, but also because there are very cute women in the region. And I know Paulo was telling me that this was something that he was amazed when he was over there in Rio for a long time. So that's basically it. I mean, I've been doing business for the last 10 years in Latin America. I've done a social network that reached almost 53 million registered users in Latin America, a calling card business. And today what I can offer you is if you need to generate traffic, leads, and revenue, Datam is one of the best forms that can make your business grow tremendously. And then the rest, just check it out. Go to fnbox.com and you can see a little bit more of the other properties that we have. Thank you very much.